live for 10 seconds just to make sure the audio and the visual and everything's working. Okay. Do a countdown. Okay. Yep. Okay, councillors, we're here now testing, ready to start our council meeting in approximately 2 minutes. We're just checking that the visual and the sound is working appropriately for those people who are joining us on YouTube that can see and especially hear us. Okay, thank you, councillors. Being 6 o'clock, I'd like to declare the ordinary meeting of Blayney Shire Council for October open, and thank you all very much for your attendance. In opening this meeting, I'd like to recognise the traditional custodians of this land, the Wiradjuri people, and pay my respects to the elders, both past, present and emerging. Just like to remind everybody that this meeting is being live streamed and participation here today may involve you being recorded as part of the proceedings here. Apologies for not attendance. Here, I'll recognise and acknowledge Councillor Scott Denton is joining us on Zoom. Welcome, Scott. Nice to see you. I'd also like to welcome everybody or members of the our Blayney Shire community who may have chosen to join us here this evening to watch us live stream. Now go through disclosures of interest. Madam GM, do we have any disclosures of interest for the business here this evening?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I do. I have two. I have a declaration of conflict of interest from Councillor Alan Ewan in regards to 10 on page 55, which is the deeds of lease for the Cadia Pipeline Agreement. It is a pecuniary interest. The reason for this interest is that Councillor Ewan is an employee of Newcrest Mining Limited. Another declaration of conflict of interest from Councillor Ewan for item number 16 on page 92, which is the development application 58/20, the erection of a dwelling at 18 Piggott Place. It is a non-pecuniary interest, less than significant. Councillor Ewan Councillor Ewan's daughter is the employer of the applicant. So the applicant is an employee of Councillor Ewan's daughter. Declarations of interest, Mr Mayor.
Great, thank you, Madam GM. Councillors, we do have a public forum this evening in regards to development application at 760 Torwood Road. I'd like to invite Kathleen Wilkins just to come up, and Kathleen's just going to say a few words about the development and give us a bit of an overview. Thanks, Kathleen.
Anybody pressing, do you?
No, just talk pretty close to that microphone.
Hi, I'm Kath Wilkins. We've got a development application in for 760 Torwood Road. I guess this is sort of one of our dreams to connect agriculture with tourism a little bit. It's sort of been one of those things that we've wanted to get off the ground for maybe the last 6 years, and it's finally sort of come about that we've got the courage, I guess. Certainly, I'm passionate about ag. We've got a little farm, so we don't have big broad acre things, but we certainly do have a nice F1 Wagyu program going, so we kind of want to share that with other people. We've got a nice view, so yeah, that's sort of where we're headed with that.
Kathleen, thank you for that overview. It wasn't too daunting. You've done very well. Okay, councillors, now move through to after our public forum. We do have a mayoral minute, if I can refer you to that, which is item 1, page 5 for your reference. The Central Tablelands Local Land Services Light in the Path, and this wonderful book. I've only had a chance just to flick through it, but it's something quite special. I've just been informed that Blayney Shire Council staff have been involved in some of this cool burning out at Neville already, and very successfully. So it's quite appropriate, and I do thank Local Land Services for donating this book, which we'll then donate to the library. And I'll just read the last paragraph, is that Light in the Path is a record of the learnings and collaboration between Aboriginal people and the broader community in search of a better, more sustainable way to rehabilitate and care for our natural environment. The launch comes at a time of increased interest in how Aboriginal communities conduct fire burns as the benefits become more widely understood and appreciated. Councillors, I'd like to move that this is accepted, this mayoral minute, and Councillor Ewan has seconded that. I'll put that. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Councillors, now move through the minutes of the previous council meeting, page 6, item 2. Have a move that is a true record. Thank you, Councillor Reynolds, and has moved that way. Councillor Newstead has seconded that. I'll put that motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Any matters arising from those minutes? Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My question is with regard to 2009-005, which was the mining review rating issue. And just a follow-on question, have we made representation to the local member yet with regard to these concerns about the potential of a major reduction in our mining rate revenue?
Yes, Councillor Reynolds, I've had a meeting with our local state member in Paul Toole. I've also been in contact with the President of Local Government New South Wales, Linda Scott. Upon seeing our resolution of council, very supportive of our attention is there, and Local Government New South Wales very keen to support us at the conference in regards to this resolution. So yes, there's been some really positive outcomes. Long way to go yet.
This is an ad, Mr Mayor. It's also interesting, Cabon has also discovered it finally, but they didn't actually mention our council. In impact, they mentioned a heap of other councils, but forgot about Blayney. So maybe you should be having a chat with the Cabon Mayor as well and highlighting that it would have a big impact on little old Blayney.
I think I might take you up on that suggestion, Councillor Reynolds. Councillors, no other questions or comments with regards to the minutes. I'll now draw attention now to our item 3, page 16, Council Resolution Report. There's a recommendation there. Who note the report? Do I have a mover? Councillor Somervale has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Newstead has seconded that. Councillors, any questions or comments in regards to this item? The comprehensive report. What's going on? Councillor Reynolds?
Mr Mayor, I was just going to encourage the community to come along with regard to the settlement strategy, 2020, the last item. I was able to attend the Millthorpe gathering last week, and about a dozen people came along with a variety of questions and asking information. But particularly, I think there's another 3 public meetings and 1 more online gathering, plus submissions, and just I strongly encourage the community to participate. A lot of opportunities to do it throughout our villages right here in Blayney, I think on Wednesday night, if my memory serves me right, to come and talk about the settlement strategy.
Yes, absolutely, Councillor Reynolds. Very important document, and we're certainly looking for public feedback. Councillors, no other questions or comments. I'll put the motion. Councillor Somervale, just in time, Councillor.
Just in time. Yes, Mr.
Got
Mayor.
my eye on you.
My microphone on?
You have the floor. Yep.
Yes, thank you. Yes, the Financial Assistance Committee recommended at its last meeting that we look at amending the guidelines, and I see that's a work in progress, which is good. I would just like to make sure that if that is going to be recommended and brought to council, that we do so in good time for that to be in place at the next round of Financial Assistance Committee applications. Yes, now I don't know whether it's going to mean an amendment to the guidelines or to the policy, and whether it's going to need the policy to be exhibited or not. So before we're all over COVID, we should try and make sure that's done in good time for the next round.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Somervale. Yeah, definitely note that. Okay, councillors. Councillor Ewan.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I was just wondering if we had any update in regard to the bridge inspection consultant that we engaged for the Lyndhurst Leabeta Street Bridge. Whether we've had any feedback since the non-funding for the grant which we applied for wasn't successful, and I was just wondering where we're up to with the consultant.
Thank you, Councillor Ewan. Mr. Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have engaged the consultant. The consultant's actually liaising with Bathurst at the moment because they have to travel a fair distance, and they try and aggregate a number of them, which then helps reduce the cost to us. So they're waiting for a response from Bathurst. And
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ewan. Councillors, any other questions or comments regards to this item? If not, I will put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Move now through to item 4, page 27. That's Risk, Work, Health and Safety Quarterly Report. Recommendation their report be noted. Do I have a mover for this recommendation? Councillor Reynolds has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Denton, I can see you waving there. I'm sure you'd like to second that report. Thank you, Councillor Denton. Questions or comments? Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very disappointing that someone's actually vandalised the hand sanitizer bollard at Heritage Park and also tried to set the amenity sink alight. Vandalism seems to be an ongoing issue that we're encountering in our community. How you counter it, though, is a challenge. With regard to the incidents notification, a little concerning that particularly vehicle incidents have doubled, even though it's only from 2 to 4, and also body injuries have increased slightly. But I assume, again, the council staff member that's working with this is trying to make sure that we, again, reduce the number of incidents. But is there a reason why we've seen a small spike in the number of incidents?
MGM, have you got an answer to that?
Through you, Mayor, I have to take that on notice. I know kangaroos have been more prevalent of late. Incidences can be as minor as a paper cut, but we have had some sprained ankles, and just working through just some of those better work practices and manual handling training and being aware of boggy ground and those sorts of conditions.
Looking towards zero, Councillor. Okay, councillors, no other questions or comments? If not, I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Declared carried. Okay, councillors, now move through to item 5, page 30. The Western Regional Planning Panel is 1, 2 and 3 recommendations. So I have a mover for these 3. Councillor Ewan has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Newstead has jumped in. Second that. Questions or comments? In regards to makeup of the Regional Planning Panel, no questions, comments, pretty straightforward. Nothing's changed too much there. There was a slight amendment to the wording, wasn't there? Heather Nichols is now the Deputy General Manager, not the Director of Environmental Services to take note, councillors.
Yep.
Okay, Councillor Somerville.
Just a comment, Mr Mayor, as your council's representative on the Western Region Planning Panel. The Department of Planning has had a series of webinars, of 2 now, which I have been on Zoom, and I've dialed into those, and there's been a facility for questions to be asked, and the department has agreed that the answers to the questions will be circulated to all those who attended. I asked a question which I haven't got the answer to yet. It wasn't one of the questions reached during the session, as to whether it would be good practice for the planning panels to have site meetings particularly with objectors, so that the only opportunity that objectors have to have their concerns listened to is not just in a formal hearing session by the planning panel, but there's a preliminary site meeting which might give people a bit more confidence in a less formal setting to express their opinions. And I know with the quarry matter that was referred to the planning panel last year, I think a lot of people were disappointed that the only opportunity they got was at the public hearing. Whereas if council had been the consent authority, we probably would have had a site meeting and spoken to the objectors on site. So I've raised that, and I'll see what the answer is going to come back in due course.
Thank you, Councillor Somerville. I'm glad you actually did that, because it was, as you say, a very disappointing process for a lot of residents in regards to that quarry proposal, and I'm sure an on-site meeting, if it was available, would have just helped the process immensely. So thank you for doing that. Okay, councillors, no other questions or comments. I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Now through to item 6, page 32, report of council investments as at the 30th of September. Recommendation there 1 and 2. Do I have a mover for these? Thank you. Councillor Kingham has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Reynolds has seconded that. Councillors, any questions or comments in regards to this report on Councillor Reynolds?
Mr Mayor, I'd just like
sorry,
to point...
I'll go Councillor Kingham, and then Councillor Reynolds could wait. Councillor Kingham, you have the floor.
I'd just like to point out, Mr Chairman, that $17 million in investments, but almost all of that is in restricted assets of one way or another. So it's not as though there's a lot of money left over for any projects that people might have for a wish list. But it's very prudent of staff, and I'd like to thank Financial Officer Tiffy Earlham for doing another good job.
Absolutely. I concur with those comments, Councillor Kingham. Thank you. Councillor Reynolds?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. A question probably through to the Director with regard to about $17.5 million, which is up a bit over $1.5 million on this time last year. One assumes most of that is that we've had the sale of Streetfield Close, and so our cash reserves through the sale of those, I think it's 14 blocks or whatever the number of blocks was, I assume that was is part of the reason why that our reserves are a lot higher than were 12 months ago?
Director.
Through Mr Mayor, I have to take the question on notice. I don't have that information at hand, but there have been a number of settlements from Streetfield Close, and there are a number still ongoing.
Second question, Mr Mayor. We were hoping that our biggest ratepayer may pay in advance. Have we had any indication that they've actually been able to make a full payment for the year?
Madam GM?
Mr Mayor, the first instalment has been paid and they're checking up where the rest is.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Councillors, any other questions or comments? If not, I will put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Declared carried. Move now through to item 7, page 37, Information Technology Quarterly Report. This is a relatively new report, councillors, which is very important, staying on top of what's happening with our information technology. There's a recommendation there, this report be received. Noted. Do I have a mover for this recommendation? Councillor Newstead has moved that way, and Councillor Somerville has seconded that. Councillors, any questions or comments? Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. May I commend the staff for developing this new policy and looking at developing a draft of new policies that will be brought to council as in one of our big vulnerabilities, but not just our council, all of the councils. But I also do like to see that there is going to be more training offered on to councillors and staff, particularly on cyber security awareness early in 2021. So hope that's forthcoming because it is a huge threat to this organisation and any organisation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Councillors, any other questions or comments regards to this report? If not, I will put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Declared carried. Councillors, item 8, page 40, the review of council policies. Recommendations there 1 and 2. Do I have a mover for these recommendations? Councillor Ewan has moved that way. Councillor Somervale has seconded that. Councillors, any questions or comments regarding the modifications of these policies? Straightforward. No questions, comments. I will put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Councillors, I draw your attention now to page 53, item 9, disclosures by councillors and designated persons. Recommendation there. Do I have a mover for this recommendation? Councillor Reynolds has moved that way and Councillor Newstead has seconded that. Any questions or comments? Councillor Reynolds?
Mayor, just a question on where this information would be available. Is it available over the counter or where is it going to be publicly available if anyone does want to look at our disclosures?
Yep, no, I'll like the GM to respond to that.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the disclosures of interest and written returns are available at the front counter, available for anyone to come in and ask and have a look at.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam GM. Other questions or comments? If not, I will put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Declared carried. Now through to page 55, item 10, deeds of lease, Cadia pipeline agreement. Councillor Ewan has declared an interest in this item and is leaving the chamber. Okay, thank you, councillors. We have recommendations there, 1 and 2. Do I have a mover for these recommendations? Councillor Newstead, I think, got in first, and I believe Councillor Reynolds will second his recommendations. Any questions or comments? Again, straightforward lease arrangements with Cadia. No questions or comments. I will put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Could we invite Councillor Ewan back into the chamber? Okay, thank you, councillors. Move now through to page 57, item 11, the Director Infrastructure Services monthly report. Recommendation of report be received and noted. Do I have a mover for this recommendation? Councillor Kingham has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Denton has seconded that. Thank you, Councillor Denton. Questions or comments? Councillor Kingham.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to ask a question in relation to the Blayney to Mondrel railway line feasibility study. I'm interested in this, and I'm just wondering a few details. What is the benefit cost ratio that it did not meet? And it's talking about another high level design and planning. Who's paying for that? And how are they going to do any different to what the $3 million study was? So is this a $3 million study?
It potentially will be. So your two questions. So the BCR, the study revealed that the BCR for this project potentially was only 0.9. It needed to be 1. So that, or above 1, sorry. So that means for every $1 that the state government invests, they need to get $1.01 back or better. This just fell short. So because it just fell short, it actually indicated to the government, or Transport for New South Wales, that it's pretty close to stacking up. So instead of just shelving it, if you like, saying it doesn't stack up, well, it's that close. That, and again, thanks to Paul Toole, they are now going to go ahead and commit to the next level feasibility study, which will involve some engineering. You know how familiar we all are with being shovel ready, like having the DA ready and all the things ready before the funding comes. I believe this is the intention of the Transport for New South Wales, to actually invest a bit more money, do some more high-level engineering, some more detailed design around the budget and about what it might look like at either end, and especially the interface between the western and southern lines. So it's a very positive outcome. I don't think we're expecting the government to announce a $4 million spend straight up. But it's that close from a business for stacking up that the government will go to the next level and prepare for hopefully future funding, either from the state or the feds. So it is a very positive outcome, really, and they will start that. I would imagine it's somewhere between $1.5 and $3 million study.
The feasibility study that's been undertaken, that's not open for public knowledge. Are you aware of any of the results?
No, there is an executive summary, which will, I don't think it has been released, but will be released. I think just a very high overview, pretty much touching on what I've just spoken about. The study itself, like the engagement with all the businesses, I think will be kept confidential because that was the premise of the cost-benefit ratio, was the businesses that may use the line if it was open. Now, we are hoping that while this study is going on, or the next level of design, is that business environment will improve, and next time, the next year or two, when we do another BCR, we'll get it over that magic 1 number, and by then they'll be prepared to know exactly how much money to spend. So, but there is an executive summary.
For this council is very much a tourism benefit between Millthorpe and Carcoar. That if the line was open, I'm sure that the Cowra railway people would use the line, and there's a tremendous increase in people wanting to travel, particularly by train, which is unusual. But at that forum that was held here about 5 years ago, we were alerted to what's happening in Canada about rail transport, and there's a tremendous benefit for this council linking particularly Millthorpe to Carcoar through Blayney, and with the Blayney railway station being developed, all we really need is some commercial operator to want to use it. That's what we're really searching for, and I was just wondering whether there's any, you don't obviously want to disclose if you did know of any commercial operator, but it's amazing that you think that to go use the Blayney to the Mondrill line is going backwards to Wollongong, but it's not really. It's only 130 kilometres, and when you think the train could travel at 50 kilometres an hour, it's only, 3 hours, and then they're well on the Melbourne line. So it initially looks as though it'd be impossible, but the more you look into it, the more benefits there are, and I'm enthusiastic about being open, and I'm expressing my opinion at every opportunity to not develop a sort of like a cycle link. We do not want a cycle link between Blayney and Cowra because that's opposing the public to all the properties along the line. So I think we need to keep it rail only, but there's a tremendous possibility. And the people in Blayney at the opening of the station expressed different types of rail traffic. They don't always have to use the line. There is methods of travelling on the line but not using the line. I'm not sure of the exact word. Bruce, you would understand what that word is, but they use the air. They're using the air. They're using the route. They're using air to keep themselves above the rail line. So, yeah, I reckon it's got a lot of potential for us.
Maglev.
You're spot on, Councillor Kingham. During the report, talking to the people putting it together, there was a lot of. It's hard to define the opportunity costs. Again, tourism, as you've mentioned, is a huge one. It's hard to put a number on that at the moment. But also what's evolving and what will change in the next few years is inland rail. The report or the briefing we had spoke about the opportunity costs of the opportunities that would come about from inland rail once that is finished. Now that's still 3, 4, 5 years away, but once that's up and running, potentially it's a different conversation with Blayney de Mondrel, and of course Port Kembla is growing and changing a lot, and they need access to Western New South Wales. So yes, you're right, a lot of opportunity costs. So very exciting and very positive news from the state government to continue investing in the engineering and some preliminary design for this line. Councillor Ells.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I was also keen to find where there is a copy. So if and when the report is available, or executive summary of that, whether councillors could be alerted to the report. And to quickly answer a couple of Councillor Kingham's questions, there was a forum here in Blayney, what was it, about a year ago, might have been slightly more, and there were some potential users, including grain users, but limited potential and particularly direct route to, for example, an Ildra flour mill from Cowra. It's a lot quicker to take it on truck than to try and bring it around via rail. But anyway, I'm sure the proponents are looking at that, or the people who are investigating. One of the big challenges, though, is going to be the cost, because from what I understand, every bridge has to be replaced, all the track has to be replaced, in the tunnel at Carcoar it has to be lowered. There are a number of challenges, and you're talking many hundreds of millions of dollars in the end. But hopefully we're on the right phase, and tourism would be part of that, but they would also have to be a big end user, from what my understanding is of the business case. Speaking of that rail line, and John Holland Rail do maintenance work, have actually undertaken a investigation of all weeds to the end of our local government area. I can report back through, and Upper Macquarie is now moving to get the weeds controlled. So that was a big bugbear. There has been an issue in Carcoar itself with weed control, with some heavy weed control, I believe, around the railway station, particularly around the embankment, that might have denuded embankments. Upper Macquarie again is investigating. Upper Macquarie didn't do the work, it was John Holland Rail, but Upper Macquarie has been made aware of that particular issue. A couple of other issues in the director's report. With regard to the Victoria Street underpass footpath, I was approached by a resident earlier this week after reading the report, just concerned about where these potential light poles are going to be when that work is undertaken. The resident has, I believe, been in touch with council, so the important thing is to just keep in touch with the resident, because they do have the house directly opposite one of those light poles. So hopefully we can work together. They're happy to work together, but the director might have some further information on that.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. The director would like to comment.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor, your inquiry is quite timely. Actually, we only discussed that today. The two light poles are to be removed, and at the moment we're investigating the option of replacing them with solar. Reduce the need to underbore a supply line through the subway.
Very good news.
What's going on in regards to that? Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Another question?
So also to note, Neville finally has its first major footpath. So congratulations to council staff. I haven't actually seen it yet, but in the report here it's been completed.
Celebrating, Councillor.
And I think their other celebration was when the hard court facility comes online, hopefully in the next year or so that they'll be able to, which will be in front of the footpath or behind the footpath. And one other note, myself and Councillor Ewan had the opportunity to hear the good news about the mobile phone tower in Carcoar. The announcement by Mark Colton, the Regional Communications Minister, last week. Fantastic news there that there will be now a Telstra tower, only a mini tower. But I'd also like to pass on lobbying effort, and I'd like to thank the General Manager in particular for all the work that she has done over the last year and a half to try and get that tower on behalf of the community as well as the Carcoar community. So I think it should be noted that the General Manager and some of the council staff were heavily involved in getting that telecommunications tower hopefully constructed in the near future.
Absolutely. I'd also like to acknowledge Andrew G, our federal member. He's had representations made to him for quite a long time now from various members of the community as well as our GM and councillors themselves. So quite problematic, it's quite difficult behind the scenes to make these get these mobile towers, but Andrew G did a great, he just kept at it, and with Mark Colton's support, and in the end, as you say, we have this great outcome. It's still 6 months away, but it's good. As far as I know, everyone's very happy about it. Okay, thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Councillor Newstead.
Just a quick question to the Director on Carcourt Street. I noticed that it's slated to start next Monday for the first stage, which is between the highway and Charles Street. I'm just wondering about the second stage, which will affect probably a lot more traffic, including buses, and that when were you looking to start it? Was it going to be maybe during the school holidays or anything like that, Grant?
Mr. Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The project program is still unfolding. Starting next week, more focused on the stormwater pipe installation to replace the existing channel land that faces the caravan park. We'll be installing VMS and traffic control, which will continue as the project progresses.
Yeah, no, traffic control will be an issue there, Councillor Newstead. You're right there. Okay, councillors, how are we going? Councillor Somerville.
Thank you.
On the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had some questions in relation to the Blayney to Demondrell line, but I think most of it's been dealt with. My only comment there would be if the BCR is getting so close, it'll be increase in potential freight. I think it'll make the difference and tip it over the one
Absolutely correct,
mark.
Councillor.
We just need another major producer to commit to using the line, and that's where the big bang will come
Absolutely correct.
in. A couple of other comments on the asset valuations. I'd commend staff for getting an external review in relation to our transportation asset classes. It's an enormous amount on our balance sheet, and it's an enormous amount of depreciation we have to cover every year in our accounts. And it's a non-cash item, but we're judged on it. And everything we can do by looking at useful lives and things like that, we should do to make sure we're not charging ourselves more depreciation when we really have to. And I'm very pleased that we're getting someone outside to just come and have a look at how we approach all that. That's really good. My only other comment in relation on the equestrian centre, I see we're using a lot more water than we thought we would. Question is, that's presumably water from our on-site dam that's being used there.
That's certainly my understanding, yep.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's right.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Which presumably is pretty full. That's all. Thanks.
Councillor Somerville. Councillors, any other? Councillor Ewan.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to make comment to the Director of Environmental Services in regard to pleased to see the geotechnical investigations taking place, or to take place on Torwood Road. Unfortunately, Torwood Road has deteriorated over the last couple of years with some wet weather that we have had from time to time over that period. So that will be good to see that happen, so that probably we can bring that heavy patching into the schedule of works at some stage. And also talking of roads, last week, of course, we had the pleasure of having Andrew G and Minister Mark Coulton in the area again, and they made the announcement of $538,301 towards the Newbridge Road between the underpass and overpass bridges, and I believe that work's going to commence quite soon.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, January.
That's quite soon. That's good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ewan. Any other questions or comments regards to the Director's report? If not, I will put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Declared carried. Okay, councillors, now move through to page 62, item 12, Central West JO Regional Bitumen Emulsion Contract. Recommendation there. Do I have a mover for this recommendation? Councillor Somerville would love to move this recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Somerville. And Councillor Newstead, I believe, been first to second it. Councillors, questions or comments? Councillor Somerville.
Make my usual comment. I think that we had one of these contracts at our last council meeting too, and I made the same comment. The joint organisation has joined forces with two other joint organisations and are spending, I think, a total of $450,000 engaging some consultants to make some recommendations in relation to best practice in aggregated procurement. And one of the outcomes of that, one would hope, is that they look at how what best practice is when it comes to the aggregator charging a fee for their services. As councillors know, I'm not a great fan of the percentage basis. I'd rather see the joint organisation charging fees to all the councils who participate to cover their costs and maybe a small margin. We've been saying that for a while, and the JO is well aware of our view, and I notice again in this recommendation we are again noting the fact that we would prefer to pay a transparent fee rather than a commission.
Totally appropriate. But of course, it is potentially a very good revenue stream for the JO once we sort it all out. Thank you, Councillor Somerville. Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Declared carried. Item 13, page 64, minutes of the Blayney Shire Sports Council meeting held Thursday the 20th of August. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 recommendations there. Councillors, do I have a move? Councillor Kingham would like to move the recommendations. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Newstead has seconded that. Thank you, Councillor Newstead. Questions or comments? Councillor Kingham.
Mr Chairman, I'd just like to point out two things. There was a
May
lot
I
of
point out
discussion.
that Councillor Kingham chairs the Sports Council. There
Was a lot of discussion about allocating $400,000 of drought funding to the big shed. But I'd like to point out that there were 3 horse groups at the time. We now have 6 horse groups using that facility. And I'm looking forward to the same reaction to the new change rooms at King George Oval. Now, it's not just for footballers. There's little athletics, rugby union, netballers, and I'm looking forward to that being a reason why we can get regional carnivals coming. And there's a lot of junior footballers and junior netballers, and what we really need in this town is to attract people from outside to come in and spend money. And I think that the big shed, as I call it, out there at the showground, and then the new change rooms, which will be hopefully as good as Mudgee has, will be an incentive for regional carnivals to come to Blayney, and I think that's what we should look forward to. We think it's a lot of money, $750,000, but it's an incentive for people to come and use it. And I just make the point that the Sports Council is very much a people thing, so we need volunteers participating in all the various sports. And the Sports Council is only as good as all those people putting their hand up and coming to the forum and bringing their ideas, and then we come to an agreement and bring a policy to the council.
Thank you, Councillor Kingham. I couldn't agree more. There's no doubt King George Oval is a wonderful facility, but these improvements will turn it into a genuine regional facility, hopefully, and attract more use. Councillor Reynolds,
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My question is in relation to item number 4 in the recommendations, particularly the part day usage charge and then the seasonal hire charge for school use. And I see that a letter was to be written by Christine Smith. So for a start, has that letter actually been received by council to actually put this into a recommendation?
I'm not sure. There was quite, and Councillor Kingham might like to add something. There was some discussion about we actually don't have that in our fees and charges. My understanding is that will be considered at next budget time. There was no urgency to do it like now, so I guess as a result, we acknowledge this now as an issue for the Sports Council, And next April, it will be brought forward as a consideration how we do a part day usage charge during our budget time for 21, 22. That's certainly my understanding of the committee. I don't think they're looking for some immediate change or modification to our fees and charges schedule, but would appreciate consideration of it next year in our budget time. Is that, Councillor King, is that the way you understand it? Yep. Thank you.
And the second question then on part B, the school use of sporting grounds. So is that a review of all schools? Well, I assume it would be the ones in Blayney plus Millthorpe, given that I don't know if the like in
Heritage
Lyndhurst.
schools, yes, yes, it'll be a...
So there will also be a review there of all schools for in the budget process next year.
Okay, councillors, any other questions or comments in regards to the minutes of the Blayney Shire Sports Council? If not, all in favour?
Aye.
Declared carried. Thank you, Councillor Denton. Councillors, now page 67, item 14, minutes of the Traffic Committee meeting held 9th of October. There's quite a few recommendations here, numbers 1 to 7. Do I have a mover for all these recommendations? Councillor Reynolds, who chairs this committee, would like to move all these recommendations. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Somerville would like to second it. Councillor Reynolds, would you like to talk us through what must have been a very long committee meeting?
And thank you to the Director, Grant Baker, for both taking the minutes and also being the Secretariat for this meeting, which went 2.5 hours. So yes, a very long Traffic Committee meeting. There was a request by Wires to put up some signs, and so we've made some recommendations A, B, C and D, and they have to be special new signs that are simple compared to the old Wire signs. There is an event for 12 months' time, so people are becoming optimistic that events may start to take place, a cycling event. There were some concerns expressed about the width of some of the roads in the Newbridge area, but that will be subject, one of the many conditions, and there were a lot of conditions, subject to police approval. So the police will go and inspect that route and make a decision whether it is feasible to conduct a cycling event. And it was also of concern that that particular event was not closing off the road. So again, the police will make an assessment of that one. The Spring Hill Road, there is an application to have a school bus route that runs from Spring Hill back to Millthorpe. And so we at Traffic Committee are recommending that some school bus signs, given it is a new route, there wasn't a school bus on that road. There has also been some traffic analysis done on that road. We do actually have some data on a daily movement, and there are a large number of heavy vehicles that actually use Spring Hill Road. In our shire, much of it is currently dirt, about 2.1 kilometres, I think, of dirt in our shire at the moment, but that is another issue. And then the service station was, the giveaway signs, or the proposal to change the giveaway stop signs on Browns Creek Road and Carcoar Road to giveaway signs. While it did meet the criteria for distance and sight, the police in particular, but also Transport for New South Wales did express some concerns with the dam bank coming from Carcoar going towards Millthorpe on Carcoar Road and the pine trees on the other side, that it would potentially be an issue. If we did, the people would not slow down and stop if there was a giveaway sign. So the recommendation is to leave it as it is with the stop signs. And I believe Councillor Ewan, relative of his, had a recent incident where someone didn't actually stop and came out in a vehicle in that particular intersection. So stop signs are important, and police will look at some more enforcement. And with regard to Orange Road and the West Side Petroleum Service Station, this is probably the most controversial of the recommendations. It's putting a no stopping along Orange Road side of that service station. If you look at the power pole, it's been hit a number of times, and Essential Energy in particular are very concerned about their power pole. So the recommendation was to actually put a no stopping sign there because trucks are finding it difficult to get in and hitting the power pole, etc. So no stopping is a much better option, but it could have an impact on that business. But there is still in, I think it's Ogilvy Street, east, is it, or the
Off Orange Road.
no, on the other side coming in, that the other side of the service station, that it would still be parking available there. And the other major issue, number 7, which was Victoria Road from Millthorpe out through to our boundary, which is about 5 kilometres out, to put a 10-tonne limit. This request has come from the community. Now, Cabon currently has a 10-tonne limit, except their signs are incorrect. What this would mean, though, the 10-tonne limit, that school buses and also trucks, semi-trailers, for example, servicing properties, are still permitted to go on it, but through traffic is not permitted. So there has to be a stopping reason for heavy traffic under the signage that will be put up if we make this recommendation today. So I think that's a quick summary of a 2.5-hour traffic committee meeting, unless the director has anything else to add that I've missed.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reynolds. I'll now ask fellow councillors any questions or comments in regards to these items. Pretty good summary and overview from Councillor Reynolds. Obviously, Victoria Road just makes sense. That ties it in from highway to the village. Councillor Newstead.
Just on that one then, would the road become open to everybody if there's an accident on the Mitchell Highway, and that road, which is quite often used as a bypass when there is, that allow trucks to use that road?
Mr. Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Transport for New South Wales have actually engaged with us only about 4 or 5 months ago with regards to detours along the entire length of the Mid-Western Highway, with other adjoining councils as well. And the signage can be, in an emergency situation, the signage can be set aside, so to speak, and trucks could be accepted. But from recollection, we made the recommendation that it not be used for heavy vehicle detours. Better to pull them back to Bathurst and to Shadforth and divert through Blayney.
Question, Councillor Newstead. Okay, councillors, any other questions, comments? Councillor Ewan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment in regard to, and thank the Traffic Committee in regard to Browns Creek Road and the stop signs. Even though it does, as suggested, and does meet standard, it is a bad intersection. Unfortunately, I think, and that is accelerated because of some of the speed that actually the intersection's taken at by some of the vehicles in the area. And yeah, I think unfortunately it's some of the local residents that have bad habits. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Ewan. Questions or comments regards to the minutes of the Traffic Committee? If not, I will put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? It carried. You councils now move through to page 72, item 15, development application 36-2020, Cubby House, Forest Reefs Road, Forest Reefs. Recommendation there. Do I have a mover for this recommendation? Councillor Somervale has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Secretary, Councillor Reynolds has seconded that.
Mr. Mayor,
Councillor,
in moving
yes, sorry.
in
Sorry,
moving the motion, I think we probably need to add at the end of the recommendation, subject to the recommended conditions of consent.
Yes, indeed.
Put it in there. Put on the business paper.
So you're right. Well picked up, Councillor Somervale. It needed that put in, absolutely. Sure.
Happy for the amendment.
So Councillor Reynolds is happy with that. Councillor Somervale has moved it. Councillor Reynolds has seconded. A slight amendment to the recommendation there. Okay, councillors, we have a mover, we have a seconder. Any questions or comments in regards to this item? Pretty comprehensive report. Lots of nice photos. Questions or comments? I will put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. We'll call for a division, councillors, where all names will be recorded in the minutes. I will declare that the decision was unanimous. Thank you, Lauren. Okay, councillors, next item, item 16, page 92, development application of 58-2020, erection of a dwelling, 18 Piggott Place, Blayney. Councillors' recommendation there to have a move. Councillor Kingham has moved that way. I'll notice my apologies. I'll acknowledge Councillor Ewan is leaving the chamber as he has declared an interest, yet a non-pecuniary one, but one that he feels like he doesn't need to be in the chamber for. Apologies, go back to a mover. I believe Councillor Kingham has moved that way and Councillor Somervale has seconded it. No, Councillor Newstead was keen to move that, and I apologise, I missed your hand. Councillors, any questions or comments? Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy with the recommendation. In going up and having a look at a site inspection, some of the houses are the 8 metres back from the curve and guttering. And I think it's we've come up with the staff have made a good recommendation, and that it's good to see another dwelling being built in our shire. There was one resident that was concerned, but when you actually look at the imagery, number 14, for example, is at the 8 metres, and number 16 is not, as in it's in slightly, and then number 18, which we're talking about tonight, is proposed at the 8 metres, and then the number 20 is back a lot further. So I think a common sense resolution here to come up with the 8 metres compared to the original 6.5, and it looks as though it'll be a good outcome, and hopefully we have another residence built in our community.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. There's no doubt it's in all our best interest, council and the community, that we have good planning outcomes, and I believe this is certainly one. And I'd like to just acknowledge the efforts behind the scenes of Councillor Newstead, who I know has been very committed to this issue. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Somervale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I support the recommendation. I think the applicants in changing their location of their proposed residence from 6.5 metres to 8 metres, and then that 8 metres is of course just the closest point, not the whole facade, the frontage of the building as well. I think one of the neighbouring properties is something like 12 metres off the street, which creates a significant anomaly, I think. And I think a strict application of our average of the adjoining residence rule would sterilise a fairly large part of the proposed building footprint at number 18. I think the most important thing here, as I've mentioned to the staff in my approach to this, is that we have to be consistent in the way we apply this. A bit like sheds on blocks that exceed the square metre. We have a lot of those that we need to depart from the rule in the development control plan. We've had these before where we're asked to approve variations to the setback. On a previous occasion when we did this, and the report from staff quotes this, we said, in this regard, the strict analysis applied should be tempered with a common sense approach which allows for some minor variation of the setback as long as it would not be detrimental to the character of an existing streetscape. That's what we said when we approved a variation previously. It still makes a lot of sense to use that test, and I think applying that test in this case means that we should approve the plans as submitted.
Thank you very much, Councillor Somervale. Councillors, any other questions or comments? If not, I will put the motion. All in favour? Aye. Against? Declared carried. Could you please invite Councillor Ewan back into the chamber?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
I'll call a division and let the minutes show that the decision was unanimous. Okay, thank you, councillors. Now move through to item 17, page 118, Development Application 48-2020, erection of 5 farm stay accommodation units and utilities building. This was the subject to our public forum earlier in the evening. There's a recommendation there. Councillors, do I have a mover for this before I call for a mover? I might ask the director for comment.
That's the change at the end of that recommendation as well.
Yes.
Okay, councillors, please note, Councillor Somerville,
This hasn't been moved yet.
has not been moved yet, but
Could I jump in and move it with an amendment?
absolutely you can. So, Councillor Somerville, would you like to speak to that amendment?
Thank you. I'd like to speak
Can
to
you get a
that.
seconder?
I'm not proposing it as an amendment, I'm proposing it as the original resolution, which has the additional words which I think were on the screen anyway.
So you're
which are the recommended conditions
moving
of-
the recommendation with the
Yes, but with a second part to the recommendation, and that is that condition 55, no, whether that's up there yet, no. Condition 55 is amended by adding at the end of that condition the words, the applicant to keep a register of occupations by length of stay, which is available for inspection by council upon request.
Councillor, would you like to speak to that in the interest of, unless I can get a seconder?
I'm happy to second the
Thank you. Councillor Reynolds has seconded that. Councillor Somerville, would you like to speak?
Yes,
Modify.
yes, Mr. Mayor. I think the reason for me suggesting this is that this application is for farm stay accommodation. Farm stay accommodation is part of the category of tourist and visitor accommodation, which is short term. One of the conditions proposed is that the maximum stay by occupants of these farm stay cottages be 14 days. I generally have a preference that council doesn't get involved in continuing to monitor compliance with conditions of consent once a building's been constructed. I think it should be self-policing. The applicants should make sure that condition's complied with. Council doesn't really have any means to know whether the condition they're imposing is being complied with. The reason for the additional words is to make sure that some register's kept, which is probably going to be kept in any event. A register's kept which indicates the length of stay of all the occupants of the building. So council, if it wants to, can check the conditions being complied with. That's the reason for the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Somerville. Councillors, any other quick? Councillor Reynolds,
Thank you,
second.
Mr. Mayor. I do support this with the amended recommendation. In reading the two letters of concern, the concern about the water licences, again, it's not a council consideration with regard to whether there's a single extra bore added and the demand on that bore. Greater concern that I have with the whole development from Millthorpe through to Forest Reefs is septic and the water table. This is just another development, but it could be a ticking time bomb for our community with the amount of developments, and I believe that there's at least one other large development at the moment that may come up before council in the near future along Forest Reefs Road. So it's something that our council, and it may be 10 years' time that it actually starts to affect the water table and the drinking quality, but probably more importantly, that the proponents are aware that unless they get their water tested quite frequently, that it's generally not considered fit for human consumption. So they do need a good tank system to make sure that they're creating potential problems to themselves. But anyway, it was highlighted in the two reports, particularly about the bores, and one of them I think was highlighting about the sewerage. But they seem to have, with this proposal, a mitigation strategy to put the sewerage out behind onto the farmland that is in operation. So hopefully it won't have much, if any, of an impact on the water table in the medium to long term. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Councillors, any other questions or comments? We have recommendations here now, 1 and 2. We have a mover and we've had a seconder. No other questions or comments? I will put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. I'll call for division. The minutes show the decision was unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Move through to item 18, page 156, report of the Central New South Wales Joint Organisation meeting held 27th of August. There's a recommendation there. Do I have a mover for this recommendation? Councillor Somerville has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Newstead has seconded that. Questions or comments, councillors? Fair bit going on in the JO space. Almost too much really, but plenty to do. No questions or comments. I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Okay, councillors, we do have a matter that needs to be dealt with in closed committee. This matter is item 19, Blayney Netball Courts tender. This matter is considered to be confidential under section 10A2 of the Local Government Act, as it deals with commercial information of a confidential nature that would, if disclosed, confer a commercial advantage on a competitor of the council. Can I have a mover that we go into closed committee? Councillor Reynolds has moved that way. A seconder, Councillor Ewan. I'll put that. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. which is good. Okay, thank you, councillors. We're now back into open council where we have considered item 19, Blayney Netball Courts tender. Recommendation there is that council accept the tender from Active Energy, Eldon Sporting Areas, for the restoration of 6 netball courts at the Stillingfleet Street Netball Complex, Blayney, under contract number 04-2020 for the value of $3,220 and $100, including GST.
322,000.
Sorry. That again. 322,100. Right. Okay. Thank you. Too many numbers for me, councillors, and subject to variations. Right, that concludes the business here this evening, councillors. I'd like to thank you all very much for your attendance. I'd like to thank the people who chose to view this meeting on YouTube, and I'd now like to officially declare the meeting closed.
Thank you.